meeting, but I'll be recording and Amanda be recording and I'll be leading the meeting. So if you have any questions, Melissa is on to help with answering those questions in the chat when we have something that comes up. And we'll just go through the risk assessment. At the end, I will show you all how to access the risk assessment and also how to upload your risk assessment once it's completed after you've completed all the indicators on there, the risk assessment. For those of you who do not know me, I am Carla White. I am one of the specialists with our 21st Century program. Amanda Ryland is our coordinator, which you all know. And here's our team of people for our department. Dr. Melissa McKinney is on the meeting. We have Dr. Kelly Smith. Adrian Dennis is one of our TAs. Um, Joe Dyer, Kim Hendon. Nia Marshall is also our administrative assistant, and you all will probably get some emails with her CC'd in those emails. Um, and our ALSD staff, we're here to help assist in coordination with the compliance and the technical assistance. Then we have below us is our TPI team. And the TPI team will assist with data analysis, evaluation, and program support, and all those different things as well. And we have the TAs with them. So you all may know Ellen, Christy, and Sarah, and also the Lindas and Erica Rucker sends out the weekly emails. On the next side here, we have our sign-in code. You can click on the link and sign in. I think you all can click on the link and sign in, but that is also our QR code. So please take a moment to scan the QR code and sign in. Attendance is required and will be documented as a part of your compliance. So everyone, please make sure that you get that taken care of. And I'll give everyone a few minutes to scan the QR code and get signed in. Let me put the link in the chat. Hold on one second. Oops, sorry. Melissa, can you get the link and put it in the chat?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Were you able to get it? My screen keeps popping back and forth, so hold on one second. I got it.
Tell me unauthorized user.
Okay, I got it in there. So the link is now in the chat for those of you who need the link. And I'll also get the link when we get ready to sign out so you all can sign in using that link. But that's your sign-in link. You can also, again, scan the QR code to get signed in, but the link is here in the chat now. So we're hoping to be done by 5 o'clock. Again, if you all have any questions throughout this presentation, just let us know. Melissa's kind of monitoring the chat. Amanda is on with us, but she may or may not be able to join in and speak. But if you have questions and we can't answer them right away, we'll make sure that we get an answer to you all within the email that's sent out by Erica or send an email directly to you personally. So the purpose of the risk assessment, this is something that should be completed annually by each one of us, each one of you. Let me get the QR code. I'm gonna go back. Some people are needing the QR code. Here's a QR code again. And then if you aren't able to use the QR code, the link is in the chat. But that is our QR code. And again, the link is in the chat. And at the end of the presentation, if we need to, we can go back to the sign-in part and go through that. Okay. So as I was stating, the purpose of the risk assessment is for us to promote transparency and accountability. It also identifies any areas needing support and corrective actions. It strengthens our internal systems and documentation, and it supports proactive risk management. So this is a part of our compliance. The ALSD must evaluate each subgrantee's risk of compliance with the federal statutes and regulations and the terms and conditions of a subaward for the purpose of determining this appropriate subgrantee monitoring. So this is how we will determine whether you're low, medium, or high risk, and you all will use this document to submit to us, and we will look at your scores and determine your risk level. Because of the federal compliance framework, you must have these things in place, written procedures, you must have internal controls and system documentation. Here are key references where we have our statutory information, which is 20 USC 7171 through 7176, and that outlines the legal authority and purpose of 21st century. Then we have 2 CFR Part 200, and that's a part of the uniform guidance that handles the fiscal, administrative rules, governs how federal funds must be managed. And yes, the PowerPoint will be shared with everyone after the meeting in our weekly email. Then we also have 34 CFR Part 76 and 77. That deals with our Department of Education specific regulations, detailing reporting, documentation, and allowable uses. Here are some of the general risk factors that we look at with the risk assessment, and included in the questions of the risk assessment: past experiences with federal grants, your staff capacity and training, staff vacancies, internal systems, such as your finance, procurement, and inventory, recent or anticipated system changes, or in your history of carryover or underutilized funds. So if you have some of those areas that are of concern, that will kind of be discussed and fleshed out in your risk assessment. The very first part of the risk assessment is this information where you all will complete this by the program director or designee. You will place a score in the scoring column, and we'll see that on the next slide. You'll place a score in the scoring column. The scores can either be a 0, 3, or 5. Please do not include any half points or any other points other than 0, 3, or 5. If you do not have the policy or procedures in place, the question score will be a 0. In the last column, though, and there's in the very last column, for each question, you will provide a summary of the process, an explanation, or justification for your score. Score each item based on your current status and provide clear explanations and examples. You can use program-specific data to justify your responses. But this is the place where you all will determine your risk, and you will enter that information and also make sure that you're justifying each of your answers. Now, again, as I stated earlier, each question should have something written in the summary of process, explanation, justification column. So if you look at the part here on this slide, you have your first column shows your question, the risk factors, and then you have your rating, and then you have your score column, and then the last column shows the summary of process, explanation, and justification. So that's where you will add the information in about each of the different indicators for the risk factors. So here for question 1, and what I'm going to do, there are 24 questions on the risk assessment, and we'll go through each one. One reason why the slide has this information on there, if you all need to go back at some point and just go through the slides, you can see that information, and hopefully it'll help you with your documentation and answering any of the questions. At any point, though, while you're doing your risk assessment and you need support, you can reach out to your TAs or you can reach out to us here at the State Department and we can help you with all the information that you need. Here on question 1, if your LEA or organization has received 21st Century Grant for the first time this year, and this was your first federal grant, your score would be a 5 here. And that means you have less than 2 years experience. And you would explain why in the last column, if the subgrantee has had a federal grant award previously, you would give a score based on the years of experience. Then question 2, explain your staff's experience administering your federal grant funds. So this would be where you would discuss the information about your current staff members and how, if any, have used federal funds before and their experience in using federal funds. So if you look at the different ratings, you have a 0, which is more than 5 years experience. A 3 would be 2 to 5 years experience, or the 5 would be less than 2 years experience. And you just look at an average experience of your staff as a whole. And there's a question in the chat. I'll have to get the information and add it to the chat for you all to go through it while we go through it. Melissa, do you have the link for the risk assessment?
Let me locate it.
Okay. Then for question 3, we have you need to remember. Okay, Amanda said you'll not be able to complete while you go through it. It's going to take some time and thought if done correctly. So she said we'll just wait until after the meeting to provide that. But again, I'll show you all the link to the actual document, and also we kind of go through that at the end, and it will be shared with you all in the next few days. Question 3, please remember that we will be reviewing the attendance for your training. So all those trainings where we had the QR codes for you to scan in and scan out. So we are using those also. So think about those trainings to determine your risk level here. If your staff has attended any trainings or conferences outside of what has been required, mention it in the last column. So we'll have that information and just try to make sure that we have that. Again, if you have not viewed all the videos for the current cohort 26 and any videos that have been required, please make sure you go back and do that. We are keeping a list of site directors and program directors who have watched those videos. Question 4 discusses how you analyze your staff vacancies within your program. So for instance, if you have 10 people that you have in your, that should be staff in your program, and those 10, and of the 10 people, you only have 4 people actually working, that means you have 6 vacancies, with just a 60% vacancy. So here your score would be a 5. And then if you have a score that is a 5, you need to make sure that you explain what your additional staffing is needed, what additional staffing is needed, and also a plan of what you would do to hire the staff to fill those vacancies. On question 5, you would rate your answer based on what accounting, procurement, and inventory systems you have in place at the time of the risk assessment. So this is what you would look at the time you're doing this risk assessment. How does your LEA or CBO fit into the procurement and all those different things? If you do not have any of these procurement or plans in place, you need to explain what you expect to have when you expect to have each of those in place. And Ms. Gavin, you said if we had to turnover since the trainings, can we just explain that they are new site directors and programs? Yes, you can do that, Ms. Gavin. You can have them, the new people, they need to also watch those videos and attend the training on September the 9th that we have scheduled for those who did not attend mega conference. In question 6, the grant systems, it refers to those things that are mentioned in question 5. If there have been or will be any changes, describe them in the last column. And remember, a score should be provided for each item. So make sure you describe anything that goes along with the procurement, inventory systems, and all of that information that you are doing currently in your program.
I'm just going to say something real quick. Sorry, this is Amanda. I'm not going to show me because
Okay.
I'm actually at home and not dressed nice. Um, but guys, just keep in mind that you are supposed to have those fiscal systems in place, accounting system, procurement systems, and things like that. So when it asks you about that, be honest. It could be, especially if you're a CBO that's just starting out, you may not have those systems in place, but if we know that you don't, we can help you get them into place. And so, yes, it might affect your risk. It might cause your risk to be a little bit higher. But the good news is that this year, you're not being compliance monitored, so it's not going to affect anything other than letting us know that we need to provide you with more support. So there's really no reason on this risk assessment to be dishonest when you're answering these questions, because it just lets us know that you need more help, that we need to provide you with some assistance and some help in getting those systems in place. So just keep that in mind. There's really no reason to score yourself lower than, in this case with the risk assessment, the lower the score the better, right? And the higher the risk you are. So there's really no reason to at least this year, to score yourself lower than you really need to be, because that's all that's going to do is hurt you, and it's not going to let us know that we need to help you out and provide you with the help you need. So I just wanted to say that. I'm sorry to butt in, but I just wanted to make sure you guys understood that. Okay, I'm gonna let you have it back, Carla.
Okay, Ms. Holt, you asked, do you complete it for the program or for each site? So what we have asked is that you complete it for the program, and on the front page of that, it has there are lines for the sites. But now, if you have a cohort 17 and a cohort 26, you need to do one for each cohort. But make sure you do just one for each cohort that you're in. And you would need to do it for summer 25. So on that first list, it does have where you can check which cohort is you're doing it for, either cohort 17, cohort summer 25, and cohort 26. Here on question 7, this refers to carryover funds for any federal grant, not only our 21st century. So if you are an LEA and your LEA deals with Title I or Title II funding, this is what this particular question is referring to, dealing with carryover funds for any of the federal grants. Remember that federal funds are intended to be used in the year that they are allocated. And here in the last column, you should explain what plans your LEA or CBO has in place to ensure that the carryover does not happen in the future years. Question 8 discusses your LEA or organization should have written policies and procedures for each of the items listed. So there are several items listed there that should be in place. And this again is where Amanda was talking about honesty is the best, and we can assist you in developing these policies and procedures if you do not already have them in place. So just be as honest about that as you possibly can. If you need the assistance, again, you can reach out to us and we will be happy to help you with that. On question 9, as noted, if you see that it says there, if you answer yes to any of the items listed in number 9, explain in details the details of the conflict or issue. So when you're looking at that question number 9, if you have yes to any of those, please make sure that you explain it in detail in the last column. On question 10, explain how your organization's financial management system tracks and traces expenditures to establish whether purchases are allowable under each budget line item. So does your organization have a coding system, keep track of all types of purchases that are made? For instance, if you have um, if you have a expenditure that you have on there, how do you track it in the final column? So if your scores is 3, explain those procedures and what updates to the system need to be made. So again, read it carefully and make sure that you have that. If you have a score of 0, you should be able to explain the organization's procedure for tracking those expenditures. Question 11 is similar to question number 10, but it focuses less on financial management and more on your procedures for ensuring costs are timely, necessary, and allowable. If the score is 0, briefly explain what those procedures are. If the scores are 3, briefly explain what those procedures are and how they need to be updated. Question 12, you need to explain how your organization tracks or traces equitable credits. For example, if you purchase an item and later get a rebate or a refund for that item, how do you keep a record of that refund or rebate and ensure that it is credited back to your 21st century program? So sometimes you may be purchasing something and, for instance, you don't need that item, or there was a mistake in the invoice and they need to give you a credit or for the item. You need to be able to keep track of the purchase and how it was refunded back to the 21st century funding source that you had, that it was taken from. For question 13, explain the procedures used for time and effort documentation, such as your PARs and your payroll summaries, how you all use those procedures to make sure that your employees are showing their time that they work and what they were actually doing during that time. Question 14 involves your compliance with conflict of interest requirements. And if you all remember, there has been a form emailed to you all through Erica's email about the conflict of interest, and that needs to be submitted to your TA. All employees should be trained on the rules, and they must report if they have any personal ties or financial interests that could affect their work. If your score is 0, you should be able to provide a brief summary of your LEAs or organization's procedures. So if you have someone that you know, is your responsibility to make sure that federal funds are being used fairly and without favoritism. So we can't say we want to hire our cousin to do the work just because it's our cousin, and make sure that they get funds from the program. Question 15 deals with how your LEA or organization has written procurement procedures. Additionally, the state has procurement procedures that must be followed, and we have sent out those documents regarding your purchases of $5,000 for a single item and purchases for $10,000 or more. If compliant, briefly describe your procedures for ensuring both local and state procurement policies and procedures have been followed. Question number 16, here you will briefly describe what written procedures your LEA organization has in place to inventory required equipment with the required information, which has this on that inventory sheet. If you remember, it has where you have to place the serial number, your purchase order number, the date, location, condition, and the disposal methods. Sorry. The next one, question 17, explain the written procedures you have in place to prevent and investigate lost, stolen, and damaged property. So make sure anything that when you have to, when you need to write a police report or anything like that, you make sure how do you take care of it, and what are your procedures in place to make sure that that information is documented. On question 18, you should explain how your LEA organization, what are your procedures for both on how to dispose of equipment and supplies that are broken or obsolete, and what to do with equipment and supplies that were purchased with federal funds but are no longer needed for the federal grant. So everyone would need to just give the information on how you document if anything is no longer needed, and what's your disposal process of those items. Question 19, this refers to any findings from any federal compliance monitoring and auditing in the last year, not just your 21st century. So if you are an LEA and you went through compliance monitoring last year, if there are any findings from that, you would discuss that here. If no compliance monitoring has taken place, state that and give a score of 0. Explain any corrective actions if timely corrected or resolved, and any justification for any unresolved findings. One note that we need to make sure that you all understand is that the cohort 17 compliance monitoring still remains to be closed out from last year. So this can be disregarded for this tool if not completed within the next 2 weeks. Amanda's working on getting those completed. So if it hasn't been completed within the next 2 weeks, you can give yourself the score based on um, that the findings haven't been completed or your closeout has not been done. But that's not anything that for you to worry about. Amanda's working on getting that done. For question 20, this refers to submitting your federal continuation or consolidated applications, any amendments, ES2s, and other reports, like your mid-year report, your staff and student ratio, your field trip requests, your easy reports, anything of that nature in a timely manner. So those things are when we ask for, when we have timelines or deadlines for anything to be submitted, you look at how you have submitted your documents to make sure that you have submitted those in a timely manner and by the deadline. For question 21, you will explain the due date for the risk assessment is going to be September the 30th. And I'll have that information in the last few slides when we go over it as well. But for question 21, you explain your LEA or organization's written policies and procedures, including the number of years records are retained. So your record retention information would be explained in this particular question in the last column. Question 22, briefly describe how your organization protects personal sensitive information. What written policies do you have in place? So that refers to your cybersecurity. This would be like firewall, security scans on the PC, things of that nature. So how do you protect any personal information that is seen on any of the computers? And we're at the end of this. I have kind of gone through it quickly, but it's not a long document. It's just a lot of information, and you will work with your team to get everything completed. Question 23, determine the percentage of student participation for your program. So for example, if you have stated in your application that you serve 150 students and your attendance number is 100, the percentage served would be 67%. Your score here would be a 3. So if you're currently serving less than 80% of the projected participants, please explain the inconsistency. So if you have had some issues with students attending, or just some things have happened and you have not met the number of students that you placed in your application, explain the reason why. The last question is question 24, and explain what procedures you have in place and the data used to track student growth. And if you had a 21st century program last year, describe the percent of students that improved and how. So we could use ACAP data for our elementary students. If you have any data for attendance, behavior, all of that information can be used to help with this answering this question. And if you had a program last year, make sure you describe the percent of students that improved and how they improved. Then here at the bottom, you have yourself where it automatically calculates your score based on your scores for each of the indicators. The score you will be based on that score, you'll be able to determine whether or not you're high, medium, or low risk. So between 0 and 40, you'll be low risk. Medium risk is 41 to 80, and high risk is 81 to 120. So this is how you determine what your risk level is. Okay, so Amanda, you may be able to help answer this a little bit more in more depth.
For the
Does the
attendance.
attendance, you're
Yes,
right,
yes.
does it?
Okay, so the question is, does attendance count no matter what amount of hours they attended? What we're basing attendance on is your daily average attendance. And so at this moment, there's not necessarily a minimum amount of attendance per day that has to be counted. However, we do plan to have a meeting coming up soon, an advisory meeting where we've invited several high school, several of our 21st century program directors from high schools, and we're also going to kind of bring in just some different people from that advisory committee to talk about that, because I know that at the high school and maybe even at the middle school level, there's some issues with what if we have a kid that really just comes in for 30 minutes and then leaves? Do we count them as an attendance when our program technically is supposed to last 2.5 hours that day? So we're trying to figure out exactly what that's going to look like. But for now, if they come that day, you can just say that they're counted as their attendance. Um, Now, if all they're doing is coming and having a snack and leaving, I'm going to say no, you would not count that. We need to also discuss that. There's some things that have come up over the last several months that have made me concerned that people are counting that as participating in 21st century when literally all they're doing is providing a snack to them in the afternoon and then they go home. And that's not going to work either. They need to participate in some sort of activity. It needs to be some sort of enrichment, whether it's academic enrichment or whether it's physical enrichment or SEL or whatever. They do need to participate in an activity that is ran by 21st century in order for them to be counted. And I'll just say one more thing about that. Them coming and getting a snack and then going to their basketball practice in the afternoon that's ran by a basketball coach, that is not 21st century. Okay. That's something else we need to kind of get under control. It needs to be that they're participating in a program that's ran by 21st century staff, not that they're coming and having a snack and then going to cheerleading practice or going to football practice or something like that. They have to be participating in some sort of 21st century activity for you to be counting them. Okay. So again, we're going to flesh this out in the next couple of months to exactly what this needs to look like. But if that's what you're counting as your 21st century attendance, then you need to rethink that, and we'll be happy to help you work on figuring out a better way to do your attendance than just counting kids who are really technically not participating in 21st century. They're just coming to get a snack and then they're going to their sports activity in the afternoon. So that's all. I'm not going to keep ranting about that one. So
Okay. Thank you, Amanda. So we had a question in the chat about question 24. If you did not have a program last year, what would your score be? And again, like you said, Ms. Dennis, it would be NA. So here, if you didn't have a program last year, just you would place a 0 there because you don't have any students to analyze as far as the data is concerned. Let's go to the next one. So our final hints and reminders about this risk assessment. If the question starts with what procedures or policies are in place, the answer must be more than compliant. So please just don't in the last column write compliant. Um, but it does not have to, you do not have to provide detailed list of the procedures and policies. So if compliant, it should briefly describe what procedures and policies are in place and where those procedures and policies can be found. So again, please refrain from just putting, hey, we're compliant, and not giving an explanation of for us to understand why you're compliant. The next little hint would be to read the prompt. Sometimes non-compliance requires a written response, and other times compliance requires a written response. And then the last bullet here is, in most cases, something needs to be written in the last column. So all else fails, please just write something in the last column so we'll have that information there, and just kind of explain that. Okay, Ms. Hudson, if you have 2 sites in our LEA, is the program director required to complete the assessment? Yes, the program director will complete the assessment, and it's one for the grant as a whole. So it'll be just one site risk assessment for this particular cohort, and it's for all the sites. And again, when we look at the risk assessment scoring sheet, you'll be able to see that information in a little more detail about how to write the site information on there. Yes, same
So
for 3 sites. Go ahead, Amanda.
I'm gonna say something about that, Carla. So if you notice, almost all the questions are really more about the program as a whole, not about individual sites. So almost all of the questions. Now, when you get to like the last question, we're asked about student improvement, you might have a different answer from one site to another. You may have had it where kids improved more at one site than another, and you may have to be more specific. But most of the questions in the risk assessment are about either the LEA or the organization and how they manage funds, what their procedures and policies are. Do you have written procedures and policies in place? That is what almost all the questions are about. So those really are less about the site and more about either the LEA itself or the organization itself, because they're the ones who really manage the program as a whole. You really shouldn't have, if you had 3 sites under an LEA, those 3 sites should all have the same written procurement procedures. They should all have the same written, or they should probably all be using the same accounting system. So really, it's really about the subgrantee itself, which is the LEA or the organization, not really necessarily about the individual sites on like a large majority of the questions. So that's why you really just need to fill out one instead of one per site.
Okay. So here is where the place where I mentioned earlier, if your risk rating has been altered either higher or lower, please explain why. So if there's an issue with your, if you feel that the score should be either higher or lower, you should explain that. Jennifer asks if they should have a separate one for cohort 26 and for cohort 26
Carl,
and 17.
I don't think we should make them do that. I think they can just do one because again,
Okay.
it's about the same thing. So no, they can just do one. But go ahead and let us know like what cohort you are, what cohort grants you have, and then what your site names are under those cohorts.
And then when here on your risk assessment, I'll click on the link to show you how to get to it. You will create a copy of it and then download that copy. And then once you don't do that, it'll open up an Excel document, and you would need to click on Enable Editing. You'll complete the risk assessment, and then you'll upload the completed risk assessment in the Google form on the next slide. So when you click on the risk assessment link, and it's going to open up here for us, you will see here on this first page, you have the instructions on what you should be doing, or what's involved with the risk assessment. And then on the next sheet at the bottom, you'll see where you can toggle between the two sheets. Yes, this will be shared. You can toggle between the two sheets, and this is where you will enter your subgrantee name. And if you have a cohort 17 and 26, you can just check both of those. That way, that'll encompass both. And then you can write your site names here. If you need to add information to it because you have maybe 8 or 10 sites, you can do that and edit it so it'll meet the needs for you all. This I just added 5 lines for this one, but if you have more than that, of course you can add it. But here's where you can check whether or not you have cohort 17, summer cohort. Oh, that says 2015 instead of 25. I'll correct that. And cohort 26. And you will put in your score here. So you remember your score can be either 0, 3, or 5. And put a 2 there. You put in a 3 and you can go down and make sure you put your justification in there. And if you go down to the bottom, it'll automatically calculate what your score is. So if no one should have a 3, but if you had a 3, you would be considered low risk. So that's how it all be calculated for you all. Then the next slide, we have the Google form. So with the Google form, you will complete all the required information. So you have your LEA or CBO name, the person submitting the form, and your email address. And then at the bottom, the file that you just downloaded and did all your your information, placed all your information in there and had it downloaded, you saved it, and then you will upload that file to this Google form. So when you click on a link for the Google form, you'll click here, and then the Google form will show up. And here is where you will put in all your information for your LEA or CBO. Again, the person who's submitting the form and your email address. And then you will click on Add File. So wherever you have saved that document, if you you could call it Risk Assessment 2526, you will upload it here. And if you click on it, it'll just ask you to put in a document there. And you just upload the document there. And once you get it uploaded, you'll just click Submit at the end. And that will be the end of what you need to complete for your risk assessment. Do any of you all have any questions before we kind of close out? Amanda, do you want to add anything?
I do want to say one more thing. Just one final thing. Do know that when we get these, we are going to kind of have a team meeting and go through them together, which will include your ALSD specialists, it'll include the folks from TPI, and it will include your TAs. We all kind of go together and go through these risk assessments together. And if we see that you gave yourself a very generous score, maybe you scored yourself a little lower than we feel like you need to score. So for example, maybe you said, oh yeah, I turn in all of my stuff in on time. But then when we're sitting down, we're like, yeah, no, they have a history of not turning things in on time. We reserve the right to adjust your number or to add some points to your final risk assessment. So just because at the end you say you're low, once we sit down and look at it, if we don't agree with some of your answers, it may be that by the time we kind of go through it, you might be medium or might be high or whatever. But we'll let you know if that's the case. We're going to let you know no matter what your risk level is going to be. And again, it's not going to affect anything this year other than it just lets us know that we need to provide you with some more support. So it's not going to affect your compliance monitoring because we're not doing compliance monitoring this year. It's just going to let us know that, hey, this site, they've got some stuff that needs to be worked on. We need to give them some more attention. We need to go out and visit them more often and maybe provide them with some more support or get them in touch with some people that can help them write some procedures and things like that. So just understand that this is a great year to be honest on it, there's really no reason not to be honest, because it just lets us know that you need some more help. It's not going to affect your funding in any. If you total out that you're super high risk, we're not going to pull your funding by any means. It just lets us know that we need to keep a closer eye on you and to help you out more. Okay, so try to be as honest with them as possible.
And there was a question asked in the chat about cohort 16 completing this. You will not, if you do not have a cohort 26.
Yeah.
So if you are cohort 16, you will not need to complete this risk assessment.
Yep. If your grant's about to end, you don't have to do it.
Any other questions? Did anyone have any other questions or concerns? All right, that was crystal clear. I like that. You're welcome. Okay, so we're back to the final thing where you got to do the sign out. If you need any assistance while you complete this form, again, please feel free to reach out to us or your TAs. Remember to scan the QR code to sign out, and this will confirm your attendance for today. This steps ensures your participation, and it is fully recorded, so we will make sure that you all are in compliance for that. Thank you for your time and your commitment to students of our Alabama schools, and I am going to add the link for the sign out so you all can have that, and there's a different code for the sign in and sign out. But let me add a link for the sign out to the chat. Working on that now.